just to kind of give you a bit of background and context. So Ross Agnew, I head up our asset management advisory practice at KPMG. So we just talked about briefly asset management. As far as I'm concerned, construction is part of the asset management journey, and it's a fundamental part of that asset management journey. It's one part of it overall. But I haven't just been somebody who stands on the sidelines who advises people about what they do. Actually, I grew up in the construction industry. And I want to give you three perspectives of why I think education matters in construction. And I'm going to look at it from three perspectives, which are, first of all, someone who grew up in construction. Second of all, somebody who spends their entire life at the moment talking to big client organisations, big infrastructure organisations, big construction organisations about how they should manage their businesses overall. And finally, just as a parent of two young children who may one day actually enter this industry. And I frankly would be delighted if they do. So 19 years ago, I started in the construction industry on a client side. I was a graduate. I came out fresh-faced into rail track as it was there. I was a client side. I was managing contracts. What did I know about managing contracts? I did economics at university. I knew nothing about it. And I worked very hard in my first couple of years to learn all about it and realised very, very quickly that actually I didn't know enough about what I was doing. I didn't know enough about what I was managing. I didn't know enough about how I was organising things. So my first lesson, and the lesson I'll take away from that perspective, is education is hugely important, but it's appropriate education. You need to have the skills to go into this industry in the right way, in the right place. I then went on and decided, actually, I need to go and be a contractor. And I went and became a contractor. And I worked in contracting for a number of years, and I did the normal thing. I went in as a site agent. I worked my way up. I was a project manager. I was a contracts manager. I ended up being a project director on some big schemes around the country. And here, I learned another really, really important lesson. And this was the importance of kind of bringing skills together to deliver outcomes. It wasn't just about me, it was about managing massive teams and complex teams with hugely diverse skills. And lots of people have got this experience in their background, but I still remember one of the first projects I had, off to a porter cabin in Preston, actually, with my works manager, and turning up there as a project manager was my first project. I was really looking after myself. What did my works manager say to me? Son, that's your porter cabin over there. Stay in there. I'll look after what goes on out here. And that was a hugely important lesson because actually I learned a lot from him. And a chap called Graham Wishart, who's still in the industry today, a fantastic individual, and he taught me so much in those couple of years when I was looking after that project. Absolutely important. But my second lesson is really it's about managing really complicated teams, and you need a diverse set of skills to be able to manage these teams. They're hugely complicated in nature, and they're no different from businesses. They're enterprises in their own right. After a little while, I realised I might need to learn a little bit more about this, and I went back to school. I went back to university. I went and got a degree, my master's in engineering project management. And here, I really learned something. I learnt what is the value that projects deliver. I learnt about the whole output of these projects. Why were we doing these projects? I'd been building things for 8 years by then, doing things, running things, organising things, knew what I was doing. But actually, I couldn't really conceive actually how they delivered value. I didn't understand why we were doing them. I knew somebody had asked me to build this. I knew I needed to do it. I knew to upgrade. And actually, once I went there and learnt about things that boggled my mind at the time, configuration management, project controls, all sorts of different things, what I realised was actually, without having that end-to-end context, it's fundamentally impossible to actually make the right decisions. If you're running a project, or you're running a construction site, or you're doing something, and you can't understand what the entire life of that is and the role of that is, it's very, very difficult. So my lesson 3 was about the whole and understanding the entire perspective. So, slightly self-indulgent, looking back at my career. Moving on really to my role now. So I was Group Strategy Director at Costain. ran a couple of the business units there. I then shifted across into KPMG, where I spend my time talking to big client organisations, big construction organisations. And here I think really, I just want to talk to you about a couple of headwinds, frankly, that we've got in the marketplace at the moment. A pretty difficult place for all these organisations. And I think really I just want to talk to you about a few of them. So people who own, commission, develop assets have got ageing assets. They've got changing customer expectations. So customer expectations are fundamentally different. We talk about the millennials and what their expectations are in the industry. Actually, they're changing what we want to build and how we're going to build these things in the future. Capacity is a massive issue. And it's not just London. We all get pretty London-centric, particularly down around here. But capacity is a huge issue in lots of different places. Resilience is a massive issue on all of these assets and what we should be doing around them. Regulation has shifted from this cost-based regulation to risk-based regulation, fundamentally changing decisions. We heard about water a moment ago, shifting into TOTEX models. So don't just build it, maybe create an operational solution. Technology is changing the world, and I'll come on to that in a moment. We all quite often talk about BIM, and I don't think it's just about BIM. In fact, I struggle with the BIM language, if I'm honest. Investors. So you don't see this all the time down on a construction site and everything, but investors and infrastructure funds and everything are changing the game. So I was with an infrastructure fund last week even, and what did they say to me? Today, the value proposition is no longer about better financing. It's about better asset management, it's about better decisions, it's about better capital delivery, and it's about better controls. Investors are becoming active and they're really, really interested in what's happening on the ground. Valuation, so how we value assets is changing. So some of you may be familiar with the whole of government accounts and actually what's happening in how we value our assets going forward. And all of these are hugely important for us. And then finally, the most important one, as far as I'm concerned, is the skills gap. And we've touched on it already and we've heard it, but the skills gap, all of these people have got these completely horrendous situations about resilience, capacity, regulation changes, and they're also managing it against a kind of backdrop of individuals who know how to manage assets, who know how to build assets and know how to deliver them, retiring and leaving. And that is a huge, huge issue, I think, for everyone. What I think this means is organisations have to be far more agile. They've got to be far more responsive to the changing needs of this marketplace because it is very, very different. And they've got to be able to respond and change those. So I briefly talked about history, briefly talked about now what's going on in the marketplace as far as I'm concerned. Let's just talk about it from my perspective as a parent to encourage children into this industry. First question, would I advise my children to join the construction industry? Yeah, I would. I absolutely would. I've loved it. I've had a fantastic time. I've met loads of really interesting people. I've done some of the best things I've ever done. You know, I'm very proud to walk around like we all do and say, I built that. I didn't build it. Lots of other people built it, but you know, I like to claim I did. But the reality is, I would absolutely encourage them to do it. But what would I say to them is different? What were the things? And there's lots of stuff about the future that's really changing and different. There's two bits I'd sort of say. First of all, technology is changing the world, but I don't think it's about BIM. I think it's about smart infrastructure. I think it's all around better asset information and understanding actually how we manage these assets better, and as a result, making very different decisions. And we talk about BIM levels, which confuse me if I'm honest. Really, as far as I'm concerned, it's all about better asset information, and the skills that you need for that are not just construction skills, but you do need those. They're not just about engineering skills, but you do need those. They're not just about technology skills, but you do need those. They're not just about data skills, but you do need those. They're about all of them. You've got to have a broad range of skills in this marketplace now. You've got to be able to work in different areas. It is not just going to be engineering decisions driving outcomes any longer. It's going to be data-led decisions enabled by engineering decisions. And that's going to be a very different marketplace in which we're operating in. And if my son or daughter wants to go into the industry, they're going to have a different skill set. They're not going to be able to frankly, join somewhere with a degree, some spurious degree, and move into construction and have a go and learn it on the way. They're going to actually have to have skills that are deployable in the right way. My second point, and my last one, so you don't have to stop looking at me and you have to look at me for much longer, is really around the industry. We talked about business models. In the UK, I think our business model's flawed. I think the construction industry has a massive issue in front of it at the moment. I think the tier ones, as we sit here today, have got horrendous margins. I don't think anyone can pick up a paper at the moment without hearing the latest issue, latest profits warning from an organisation, or the latest major project that's gone wrong overall. And what's that's doing? It's depressing margins. It's preventing them innovating. Everyone likes to talk about innovating. How much are they actually deploying of their revenue into innovation? Very, very little. I don't think the consulting model is particularly appropriate any longer. I think that's a very, very difficult place to operate now going forward. And you can see it, frankly. You can see it in the KPMGs of this world, but the Arcadis, all the engineering construction businesses out there, they're all trying to move, and they're all trying to move really, really quickly into different markets and change. This environment is not particularly conducive to innovation. It's not particularly conducive to allowing things to move forward. And frankly, I think this is a market that will change. Any other market with these sort of margins and this sort of risk profile would have already changed. We are going to enter some sort of period of consolidation, reconciliation, challenge. There is going to be a period of that. When that's going to happen, I can't tell you. But could I be investing in the right place at the right time now? Associated with that. But it's absolutely going to change. And this marketplace is going to be very different going forward. And so what's this mean for my children and your children and your friends and things going forward? They've got to be really agile. They've got to be able to move from one career to another. They've got to get a base skill in a certain area, but they've got to be a jack of all trades. So what's the advice I was once given? Jack of all trades and masters of one, and absolutely agree that for the future generations, they need to be in that market. And they need to have that skill, those skills associated with them. So I think there's a fantastic industry to operate in. I think the idea of providing some more structure around actually how you learn and the skills that you're going to learn coming into this industry is absolutely excellent. But I think it's a very uncertain marketplace that everyone's going to be entering into. And I think what we've seen in my career thus far, our future generations aren't going to see that in the same way. Thank you very much.